Hi, I'm Ron Marsh of Ron's Trains and Things, and tonight here on YouTube Model Builders, we're talking about the role of the NMRA in model railroading today. Tonight, I'm joined on the panel by Andy Crawford and Stephen Atwell of Midwest Model Railroad. So let's get to the discussion.
Hi, I'm Steve Atwell with Midwest Model Railroad. I'm joined here by Ron of Ron's Trains and Things and Andy Crawford of YouTube Model Builders. We're jumping back into the discussion of the current status of the NMRA. We left off last week with talking about vendor differences between two of the biggest train shows of the year, the NMRA National Train Show and Amherst Train Show, and the lack of maybe some of the biggest vendors at the National Train Show that still managed to show up at Amherst. Andy?
Yeah, that's hard to understand exactly why that is, but it's extremely obvious when you experience both of those that anybody is at Amherst. From as we move to the cottage industries all the way to the biggest players in the space, you're going to see everybody at Amherst. Now it's quite busy. It might be harder to get to those people, and it may take a few circles around because of how successful all of those vendors experience it looks like it is, or seems like that it would be a good experience with the customer relationship side. You don't see the same thing happening at the NMRA at all. Something is missing that mark. It may be location because it travels around the country, whereas Amherst is at the same place. It may be a cost comparison. I think Amherst was a tremendous success, partly possibly because they know their audience, because it does have an audience. It feels like the audience is consistent, whereas NMRA feels like it's just kind of pointing in all directions. But the NMRA is quite obviously not a success with the vendor space. And I'm not sure exactly how much of that plays in with cost. I think maybe changing venues or, not the state to state difference, but just choosing what facility they were in, being outside of town may possibly change that. I'm not sure what the exact reason is, but it's obvious that vendors are making a different choice about what trade shows they attend. And I've heard the same thing about shows like Trade Fest and some of the other big ones that have a much better vendor attendance than the NMRA obviously does not have.
Great. Rather than continuing to talk about the train show, we should move on to a couple topics that are maybe a little more not negative with the hobby, but maybe less discussed about. We've touched on it early on. NMRA snobbery. I think snobbery was the term used.
It's good.
I think that might be Ron's term, so I'm going to let Ron touch a little more deep into that.
Let me tell you about two different NMRA conventions and train shows that I personally attended. I attended the NMRA this last year in Kansas City in 2018, and I attended the NMRA convention and train show in 1998 in Kansas City. So same city. Train show was in the same venue. The convention was in a different hotel, but in the same area. When I went in 98, I was like 2 years in this hobby. I was brand new. I was a new member to the NMRA, and this was kind of my first introduction into the NMRA. And where better theoretically to go to make some connections and maybe to learn a few things and kind of really, dive deeper into the hobby than the national convention. Instead, what I got was, as obviously a newbie in the hobby, I got a lot of noses in the air or derogatory comments whenever I would try to ask questions as somebody who obviously didn't know very much about the hobby yet, rather than, that attitude of, well, you're new to the hobby. We're glad that you're here and let me help you. And that's specifically at the convention. Didn't so much relate to the train show, but it definitely related to the convention itself. Fast forward 20 years. I've got 20 years experience. I've become a decent model builder by my own estimation, at least. And I also happen to have built a YouTube channel that had an audience. And all of a sudden I got a reception that was completely different. And that made me really sad for my 20 some odd year old self and for other people who maybe were new to the hobby who might think of an NMRA convention or the local division meet or whatever as a great place to go to get an introduction into the hobby. And I know that I could have an isolated experience, except I know because I've heard story after story after story from other people that it's not an isolated incident. It's a problem that is seen all across the country in the divisions and in the national conventions, wherever. People who are looking for a place to build some connections with model railroaders and to learn something, just get this sense that these advanced model railroaders don't have time for you. You get to the level where we are, and then maybe we'll talk.
So
that's my experience.
So your experience is sort of more of a closed door social circle, is how it seems, and unless you meet their social requirements, they're not really interested in your participation.
Yeah, I think so. And certainly didn't have any interest in getting to know and investing in, a new kid in the hobby. And today, I mean, we're constantly having these conversations about, is the hobby dying? It was the topic of, of previous shows here. Why aren't young people getting into the hobby, or are we chasing young people away? Well, having heard enough experiences similar to my own, I know for a fact that in a lot of ways, those organizations or the people within those organizations are chasing people away from the hobby because they just show an utter lack of, an utter disrespect for somebody who hasn't already achieved some, arbitrary level that they have in their mind within the hobby. How are they supposed to get there without somebody to, give them a little boost along the way, give them some advice, show them something, just come along and encourage them, to how they can grow in the hobby.
Well, and that's obviously their viewpoint. I mean, there was quite a bit of controversy a year or maybe 18 months ago with the president of the NMRA had an article talking about, he basically called, if you weren't an NMRA member modeler, you weren't a model railroader. Basically, it was almost to that point, and there wasn't even a whole lot of response from the NMRA when they were criticized for that. So it's fairly obvious that that instinct has permeated part of the upper echelons in the NMRA, and I think that's tremendously awful and completely counter to everything the NMRA should be, or that basically any modeler should be. When we were in our previous discussion talking about the future of the hobby, is the hobby dying, etc., the death of the hobby is well spelled out when we do not engage with and bring other people into the hobby. If we are excluding people from the hobby, we are killing the hobby ourselves. Inclusion is key, and the NMRA should be, and it is their best opportunity if they are at the apex of that inclusion of new people into the hobby. So the fact that they are an example of what not to do, when they should be the role model for what to do to bring people into the hobby, with the MMR program to other programs, inclusion and adoption of new modelers into the hobby should be at the essence of who they are. And it's obviously not. Obviously.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the benefits of the NMRA as published as said by the NMRA. I'm just going to run down the list. We'll stop at each one. We'll discuss it very quickly and see your thoughts if it's actually a benefit in today's world, or if this benefit has been just completely pushed aside and it's no longer relevant. The NMRA online archives.
It could be, it probably should be, but their technology, their use of technology has been so dissatisfying to people who've reached it that it's so difficult to work with that it has not been the benefit it could be. It should be a benefit. They should put some energy into it.
Okay, for people who may not know what the archives is, Andy, go ahead and explain what the online archives are.
They've got a massive collection of documentation from a lot of different sources, from NMRA sources and from other model railroaders. I think some of the previous modelers, well-known modelers that have come and gone in the hobby, as it has, some of their information is is available in those archives to get to in ways that it wouldn't be otherwise. And the internet's great for producing new content, new fresh content. But the internet, despite everybody saying that nothing that goes on the internet goes away, that is partially true, no doubt about it. It's not always the best source for finding things that are a bit dated. Going back in time is a little bit difficult. And NMRA has a rich history of content available in the archives. Not done the best job of making available to people where it's ever benefited should be. But if it was done correctly, it would absolutely be a big benefit.
All right. Kalmbach Memorial Library.
Have you been to Chattanooga lately?
Yeah.
Okay. The MMR Achievement Program.
Missed the mark again. I mean, it should be great. And there are examples of people who epitomize everything that should be. People like Miles Hale, who have done nothing after becoming MMRs but to make more MMRs. If that program was used that way and those particular MMRs were exemplified and held up as the example of what it should be, then it would be a great program. So again, a great opportunity that's being missed. But as it is, I think it exactly aligns and epitomizes our frustration in the last thing we were talking about with the cliquish nature and the social club nature. That's what it's become, is your certification into the club, but they basically try to keep everybody else out, and it's runs exactly contrary to how it should be.
Conventions.
We've covered that pretty exhaustively.
All right.
I feel like over and over we're kind of saying, well, that could be and should be, a real benefit, but isn't all that it could be. And I think that definitely applies to the conventions. They could do so much more. They could do so much more with less time. They could make them half as long and have twice the value if they really put that effort into it.
These last couple we've actually covered as well. The standards and conformance, and I think we can just recap there
that's the thing they should be. That should be the thing they do great. We should be proud of them for that. They do a good job at it, but I think that their attention to it has declined, and I think they should refocus on that being important.
So maybe now we can say they did a good job on it, but have failed to do a decent job on it in current times.
Yeah, I mean, there's nobody else taking up the slack for what they've done. They were just better at it in the past, and that it somewhat is slipping in focus, possibly, or maybe their methodology for doing it just doesn't keep up with the radical advancement of the technologies around our hobby. Maybe that would just always be something they were challenged at. But it is the key benefit that the NMRA should play to our hobby, probably still does, even though not as well as I would like to see them do it.
All right, we got two more here. One of them we've covered pretty extensively early on in this discussion, the NMRA magazine.
Kill it.
Yeah, I feel like it just, this has been covered. I didn't really speak up into it, but it has not kept up with the way that we consume media. It is like most of the NMRA members, living in a time of the past.
Yep.
And then finally, they offer insurance programs to insure in your collections, which is sort of here or there.
And I think that they probably used to do much better. Has more benefit for NMRA clubs, but then the NMRA member clubs, but then those clubs must have a preponderance of NMRA members as members to the club, so it becomes another requirement. So again, they've designed themselves out of relevance in that space. Although again, they should be able to do it. I mean, that's purchasing power. When you can reach quantities of scale in an insurance market, that's how you get reduced prices. It just hasn't materialized that way for most people. Not to mention, it's easier for most of us members or for regular modelers to just buy that coverage, and people are better educated about that stuff today than they were 30 or 40 years ago. and we can go seek that as a rider on our home insurance coverage for private collections and private layouts. So if unless it was a big revenue boon, that's another thing I think I would try to stay out of. But I have this tendency, if you can't do it well, I kind of follow the Apple approach to this. If you can't do it well, don't do it. And that seems like something that they're not doing well, and that it may be one of the things that's taking focus away around from the things they could do well.
All right. So this is most of this kind of stuff I've sort of touched base on earlier on with you guys in normal discussions, but these are 4 things that have been published by the NMRA that I wanted to read their exact statements and get your thoughts on their exact statements. These are, as per the NMRA, the core purposes of the organization. Provide education about enjoying the hobby of scale model railroading.
I mean, it's weak. It doesn't really give us an idea of what their actual target is. I mean, I guess it's okay, but it's a little vanilla of a marketing statement that it feels like it could be a lot better.
Well, my question is, how are they providing this education? In what form?
And they
say, convention? Are you talking about, what happens at divisional meets? And we haven't really we've talked more about the national end than maybe the more local. But I haven't seen a lot of education that's gone on that's actually helped people advance in the hobby. That's been offered on any kind of on an open or semi-public kind of a level.
Right. I feel like they would say that the education part is coming from all of their sources for the magazine, et cetera. Although all of the areas of education, I think, is the area they're doing the absolute weakest on. So their seeming mission statement draws attention to the things that they do the weakest of the things.
And this is where they could thrive if they really made as a driving focus. Okay, we've got this MMR program. We've got all these people who have been through it and have been certified as MMRs. And now if they were doing what they agreed to do when they became MMRs, and that is helping other people come along in the process and do the things, get the individual certificates that it takes to gain the MMR. And they had a means, like through their divisions, of both publicizing that and recruiting, members into that program, and those MMRs that were there were actually helping them along the way. They could do that so well, and maybe they do somewhere, but not where I am.
Me either.
I happen to be fortunate that in my local division I have Miles Hale. If I didn't have Miles Hale, I wouldn't even go back, because Miles is the only one who I see has had any interest in investing in me or other model railroaders who are interested in learning something.
All right, I'm going to plow forward here. Core purpose: ensure compatibility, promote conformance through standards and recommended practices.
That's the part I care about them for. I think they could do better. That should be the core of who they are, in my opinion. And in my instinct, that is who they are. I just don't think that they fully recognize that that's who they are anymore.
All right, let's do kind of a quick fire here. I do want to cover the core values of the NMRA. There are 8 total points. I'm going to read the statements to you and just get very quick reactions from you guys, and then we'll move on to the next one. Core value number 1 for the NMRA is respect. We embrace all scales and gauges and respect the interest of all model railroad hobbyists. We will work together with all levels to enhance our common goals. By this, we mean that we will respect the views of all segments of our multifaceted hobby, and respect the abilities and efforts of all our volunteers and members. We work forward toward achieving our common goals.
I would say, respect. I guess you can name respect in a lot of ways, but I dare most people to view it from an N-scaler's perspective. As an N-scaler.
Let's go to the next one. Independence. Without fear or favor, we will do what is in the best interest of the hobby, regardless of private vested interest. By this, we mean that we will not be unduly influenced by any special interest group.
I don't at all get that feeling that that's the case. There's too much interest on being at the penthouse of the highest end hotels and various other rewards that they get, various manufacturer relationships. I don't get the unbiased nature, or I don't get the feeling. And maybe it's true, but I don't get the feeling that they are as unbiased as they should be as a standards organization.
Great. Professionalism. Our volunteers and staff will always act professionally when setting standards, educating our members, and representing the organization and promoting the hobby. Integrity is important to our organization. By acting independently and professionally, we hope to achieve that integrity within the hobby.
They have a reasonably professional feeling, if somewhat even off-putting in the way that they approach it because of it. Which I agree, it needs to be professional feeling, but sometimes it's too much to the exclusion of modelers that makes uncomfortable.
Andy, I think you're going to love this one. Timeliness. We will act in a timely and responsive manner to meet our stated goals and commitments. We recognize that as a volunteer organization, it is difficult to stay true to our commitments in timeliness, but we must act in a timely manner in order to have credence and credibility within the hobby.
As a standards organization, that should be true. They should remove that core value because it's impossible. They need to do as well as they can, but it's impossible.
Recognition. We will recognize excellence in modeling, service to the hobby, and service to the association. Indeed, the NMRA is one of the few organizations which can credibly award such recognition and has the history of doing so.
I think the truth is they will recognize greatness in the hobby as long as it is contributing to the association. We've already talked about the fact that, they don't really consider you a model railroader if you're not in the, so to say they're going to recognize greatness in the hobby is only true if it's actually connected with the National Model Railroad Association.
Yeah, they need to remove that one.
Yeah.
Just because it's exclusionary.
Innovation. We will embrace new methods and technology to educate our members and the public and to administer our programs. Any organization which is afraid of changing or improving its programs is doomed to failure. We should never fear change, but by the same token, we should never change out of fear.
Okay. I want to respond to that by saying, go to the NMRA YouTube channel and see what they have to say.
Yeah, that's the word. It should be there. They should live to it. But anybody who's talking about the NMRA, even the people who are generally defenders of it, have to laugh at that one. I had the hardest time not reacting to that one so obviously. So that's right.
Leadership. As a leader in the hobby, we will anticipate change and prepare our next generation of leaders. We believe this hobby to be a vibrant and will continue to grow. Consequently, we need to lead in the hobby and ensure that the hobby continues through generations to come.
But they keep saying the hobby's dying. They are one of the leading proponents that the hobby's dying, and they should be one of its strongest advocates for its future. And that statement implies that they should be, but the leadership is not living by that one.
Final core value of the NMRA, communication. We will continually and effectively share our values, skills, and knowledge, promote information to members and non-members alike. As an organization, we need to make sure our message is received and understood by both members and non-members.
I can't.
It's a fine statement, and it is a part of who they should be.
But they're not doing it.
No, they're not, and mostly because of the lack of the innovation part. You can declare you want to communicate all you want, but if you say I am only going to communicate in Latin and other people don't speak Latin, it's not very effective communication. And people speak in ones and zeros today, whether they realize it or not. So if you aren't going where the people are, you're not communicating with people.
I suppose they would defend it by saying, well, you can go to their website and get the standards and recommended practices. And that's true. You can.
If you can navigate their website.
Yeah, well, that is fairly easy to find. Not much else is easy to find, but that is fairly easy to come across, on the website or with a simple Google search. But if they're talking about, again, to me, I think one of the things they ought to be doing is doing whatever they can to help modelers who are in the hobby improve, to help those who are interested in the hobby to get into the hobby and to grow. And I don't see how they're communicating in those ways at all.
I agree with you.
Especially not outside the organization.
All right, great. I think we kind of want to wrap it up with final thoughts here. Andy, your thoughts on the NMRA, where it's headed?
I mean, I worry about where it's headed. Like I worry about, I think their focus is lost. I think with the right leadership's mindset, not necessarily a change of people. I don't have enough instinct into the actual people where they are, but the mindset should align with what they say it is, what those 8 core values basically are. They should align better to that. I think they're critically important to the hobby. I think that it would be a shame if they don't survive this. I think it is an abject sin to the hobby that they are not adapting in such a way as that they can ensure their own survival. And we as a hobby do need them to be there. But I think they're letting us down in adapting to that fast enough.
Ron?
I would say, and I, in some ways, through these discussions, we've come across a lot, negative towards the NMRA. And I think that's because, we see so many ways in which the NMRA could and needs to improve. And I think it's also, this is true of Andy, I believe, and it's true of me, that my desire is for them to improve in some of these ways. I want to see the NMRA succeed in some of the core values that they have communicated and some of the things that I think they could really do to contribute to the hobby. Whether they will make those adjustments definitely remains to be seen. And, what we're seeing right now does not encourage me that they're going to go in a direction that's going to allow them to be the kind of voice in the hobby that I would like to see them be, to the next generation.
Absolutely.
Great. I think we've covered pretty well extensively the NMRA and how we feel about it today. I'm sure there's lots of other comments that we can respond to in the comments below. And if you feel differently about the NMRA or want to cover certain topics that maybe we didn't touch, feel free to put it in the comments below, and somebody of this group will hopefully respond to you. Again, this is Andy Crawford of YouTube Model Builders, Ron of Ron's Trains and Things, and I'm Steve Atwell of Midwest Model Railroad. Thanks for watching.
Oh. Hi, this is Big Bill coming to you from YouTube Model Builders. I hope you've enjoyed this discussion tonight that we presented to you. Please tune in next Friday after 3 p.m. when we will post another discussion on model railroad views. Thank you for watching. Take care. God bless, and we'll see you on the radio.